There's something people don't like to admit, but it's one of the most powerful truths you'll ever understand. Silence is not empty. Silence speaks. And when someone can go days without talking to you, without checking in, without even wondering how you are, that silence is saying everything you've been trying not to hear. You keep telling yourself they're busy, they're tired, they'll text soon, maybe they just need space. But deep down, you already feel it, because when someone truly values you, when someone genuinely cares, they don't disappear for days and call it normal. They don't leave you questioning your worth or replaying conversations in your head, trying to figure out what went wrong. Think about it. People always find time for what matters to them. No one is too busy to send a simple message, to show a little effort, to remind you that you exist in their world. We live in a time where communication takes seconds, yet you're being given days of silence. That's not confusion. That's clarity. And the hardest part is accepting that maybe the attention you've been giving so freely isn't being valued the same way on the other side. It's uncomfortable, it stings, and it challenges everything you hoped this connection could be. But ignoring it doesn't change it. You see, silence becomes powerful when you stop fighting it, when you stop making excuses for it, when you finally allow yourself to see it for what it is, a reflection of priority. Because someone who wants to talk to you won't create distance, they'll close it. Someone who misses you won't stay quiet, they'll reach out. And someone who truly values you won't risk losing you over their own inconsistencies. So instead of chasing answers, start listening to what's already being shown. Stop filling the silence with your own effort, your own overthinking, your own need to fix something that you didn't break. Because the truth is, you shouldn't have to convince someone to care, to show up, or to communicate. That should come naturally, effortlessly, willingly. And the moment you accept that silence is a message, you stop being confused and you start becoming aware. The hardest thing to do when someone pulls away is to stop yourself from chasing them. Every instinct tells you to reach out, to send that message, to check if everything is okay, to keep the connection alive. You feel like if you just try a little harder, say the right thing, show more care, you can bring things back to how they were. But here's the truth most people learn the hard way. The more you chase, the more you push them further away. Not because you're not enough, but because you're giving away your power without realizing it, when you're always the one initiating, always the one trying, always the one keeping the conversation going. You create an imbalance. You start investing more energy than you're receiving, and slowly, without noticing, you teach them that they don't have to try. They get used to your effort. They expect your messages. They rely on your presence without ever needing to earn it. And that's where the dynamic shifts in the wrong direction. So what do you do instead? You stop, not out of anger, not to play games, but to restore balance. You pull your energy back and place it where it belongs, on yourself. You give them the same space they've been giving you. You allow the silence to exist without rushing to fill it. And yes, at first it will feel uncomfortable. You'll want to reach out. You'll wonder if they've forgotten about you. You'll question if you're doing the right thing. But that discomfort is part of reclaiming your strength. Because the moment you stop chasing is the moment you start seeing things clearly. If they notice your absence, if they feel the shift, if they reach out, that tells you something real. It shows that your presence mattered more than they were showing. But if they don't, if the silence continues, then you've learned something even more important. You've learned where you truly stand without wasting more time or energy trying to prove your worth to someone who isn't meeting you halfway. Energy is powerful. Where you invest it shapes your reality. When you constantly give it to someone who is reciprocating, you drain yourself. But when you redirect it inward, when you focus on your own growth, your own peace, your own life, you begin to rise. And as you rise, everything around you changes, including how others respond to you. So don't chase what isn't choosing you. Step back, hold your ground, and let your absence speak where your effort once did. At some point, you have to stop and ask yourself a difficult question. When did you start needing someone else's attention to feel valued? Because the moment you begin chasing validation, you slowly give away pieces of your power without even realizing it. You start measuring your worth by how quickly they reply, how often they reach out, how much effort they show. And before you know it, your mood, your confidence, even your peace begins to depend on someone else's inconsistency. That's not where you're meant to live. Reclaiming your power begins with awareness. It's recognizing that you were whole before they came into your life, and you are still whole now. Their silence does not reduce your value. Their distance does define your worth. But the longer you tie your emotions to their behavior, the more control you hand over. And the truth is, no one should have that much control over how you feel about yourself. When you shift your focus back to yourself, everything starts to change. You stop checking your phone every few minutes. You stop overanalyzing every conversation. You stop trying to decode their actions and start paying attention to your own needs instead. You begin to rebuild a connection with yourself, the one you neglected while trying to hold on to someone else. And that's where real strength comes from. It's not about becoming cold or pretending you don't care. It's about caring about yourself enough to not accept less than you deserve. It's about understanding that love, attention, and respect should never feel like something you have to fight for. When someone truly values you, it shows naturally. There's consistency, effort, and clarity, not confusion, silence, and emotional guessing games. As you reclaim your power, you also change the energy you give off. You move from a place of need to a place of self-respect, and people feel that shift. They notice when you're no longer available at their convenience. They sense when you're no longer seeking their approval. Because confidence, real confidence, doesn't come from what someone else gives you. It comes from what you choose not to tolerate. And here's the truth. When you stand in your worth, you become magnetic. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you're no longer trying to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. That's the difference. That's the power. So stop looking outside for something that already exists within you and take back what was never theirs to control. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they care about someone is becoming too available. You think that by always being there, always replying instantly, always showing up no matter what, you're proving your value. You believe consistency on your side will create consistency on theirs. But what actually happens is the opposite. When someone knows they can have access to you anytime, without effort, without intention, without even meeting you halfway, they slowly stop recognizing your presence as something meaningful. It becomes expected instead of appreciated. Human nature is wired in a way that values what feels limited. Not in a manipulative sense, but in a real psychological way. When something is always there, always within reach, it loses the sense of importance it once had. That's why distance, when used correctly, doesn't weaken a connection. It reveals its true strength. Because the moment you step back, the moment you're no longer constantly filling the space, that's when the other person finally feels the difference. Think about it. Right now, they're comfortable. They know you'll text. They know you'll respond. They know you'll keep the connection alive even when they don't. There's no urgency, no curiosity, no need for them to step up. But the moment that changes, the moment your presence is no longer guaranteed, something shifts. They start to notice the silence. They start to feel the absence. And that feeling creates awareness in a way your constant effort never could. This isn't about playing games or trying to manipulate emotions. It's about restoring balance. It's about allowing the other person to experience what it's like when you're not carrying the entire connection on your own. Because if they never feel your absence, they'll never understand your value. And if they never understand your value, they'll never have a reason to change their behavior. At first, stepping back will feel unfamiliar. You'll want to reach out. You'll feel the urge to break the silence. But every time you resist that urge, you reinforce something important within yourself. You remind yourself that your presence is not something to be given away without reciprocation. You begin to understand that being constantly available isn't a strength, it's a pattern that needs to be broken. And as that pattern breaks, you create space. Space for them to step forward if they choose to. Space for clarity to form. Space for you to see whether this connection is built on mutual effort or one-sided energy. Because in the end, someone who truly values you won't let your absence become permanent. So step back, create that distance, and let your absence say what your constant presence never could. One of the most draining things you can do to yourself is sit around waiting for someone to show up the way you've been showing up for them. Waiting keeps you stuck. It puts your life on pause while you hope for a message, a call, a sign that they care enough to reach out. And in that waiting, you slowly lose focus on the most important person in this entire situation. Because the more you wait, the more your energy becomes tied to something you cannot control. But the moment you shift from waiting to becoming, everything begins to change. Instead of checking your phone, you start checking in with yourself. Instead of wondering what they're doing, you start focusing on what you should be building. Your time, your growth, your peace, these things deserve your full attention. Because while you've been investing energy into someone who's been inconsistent, there's a whole version of you that's been waiting to grow, to improve, to rise. Becoming means you redirect your focus. You pour your energy into your goals, your passions, your health, your mindset. You start doing the things that make you feel alive, confident, and fulfilled without needing anyone else's validation. And at first, it might feel like a distraction, like you're just trying to keep yourself busy. But over time, it becomes something deeper. It becomes a transformation. As you grow, your standards change. The things you once tolerated start to feel unacceptable. The attention you once chased starts to feel insufficient because you're no longer operating from a place of lack. You're operating from a place of self-worth. And that shift is powerful. It doesn't just change how you see yourself. It changes how others see you too. People notice when you're no longer waiting. They notice when your energy is focused elsewhere, when your life doesn't revolve around their presence anymore. And that's when something interesting happens. The same person who had the space to ignore you suddenly feels the shift. They start to realize that your attention is no longer guaranteed. And sometimes that's what it takes for them to recognize your value. But here's the key. You don't grow for them. You don't improve just to get a reaction or to make them come back. You do it for yourself. Because regardless of what they choose to do, your growth stays with you. Your confidence stays with you. Your life becomes richer, fuller, and more meaningful because you chose to invest in it instead of waiting for someone else to complete it. So stop waiting for a message that may or may not come and start building a life that doesn't depend on it. There comes a point where you have to stop trying to control the outcome and simply allow things to unfold as they truly are. When you've stepped back, when you've stopped chasing, when you've reclaimed your energy and focused on yourself, you create a moment of truth. Not a forced one, not something you manipulate, but something real. Because now the connection is no longer being held together by your constant effort. It's standing on its own, and that reveals everything. When you stop reaching out, you give the other person a choice. Not a pressured one, not one influenced by your persistence, but a genuine decision based on their own feelings and priorities. If they care, if they value you, if your presence meant something more than convenience, they will feel the shift. They will notice your absence, and they will reach out. Not because you pushed them to, but because they wanted to. And that difference matters more than anything. But you also have to be ready for the other possibility, the one most people try to avoid. What if they don't reach out? What if the silence continues? What if nothing changes? This is where real strength is tested, because it's easy to hold on to hope, to tell yourself they'll come back eventually, to keep a door open for someone who hasn't shown the same level of commitment. But sometimes their silence is your answer, and accepting that answer requires courage. Letting go doesn't mean you didn't care. It doesn't mean the connection wasn't real to you. It simply means you're choosing yourself over a situation that isn't choosing you back. It means you're no longer willing to stay in a space where you feel uncertain, unappreciated, or emotionally drained. And that decision, as difficult as it may feel, is what protects your peace, because the truth is you win either way. If they come back with genuine effort, with clarity, with consistency, then you're no longer meeting them from a place of need. You're meeting them from a place of strength. You have the awareness to decide whether their actions align with what you deserve. And if they don't come back, then you've freed yourself from a cycle that would have continued to take from you without giving enough in return. In both outcomes, you grow. You gain clarity. You regain control over your emotions and your direction. And most importantly, you stop settling for half-hearted connections that leave you questioning your worth. So let them make their choice and be strong enough to honor whatever that choice reveals.